Captain Sarah Chen stood at the Stellar Horizons observation deck, her dark eyes fixed on the shimmering anomaly ahead. The quantum detector had been chiming steadily for the past hour, its rhythmic pulse unlike anything their instruments had recorded before. First Officer James Torres approached with a fresh data tablet, his usual confident stride carrying a hint of uncertainty. "The signal's getting stronger, Captain. Whatever it is, it's definitely approaching on an intercept course," Torres reported, bringing up a holographic display of the energy signature. The pattern twisted and folded in on itself, creating complex geometric shapes that seemed to defy the laws of physics. Dr. Emily Patel, the ship's quantum physicist, burst onto the deck with uncharacteristic excitement. "Captain, you need to see this. The signal, it's not random. It's following the Fibonacci sequence, but with variations I've never seen before. This has to be artificial." The crew watched as the void ahead began to shimmer, space itself seeming to crystallize before their eyes. Out of the distortion emerged the most beautiful sight any of them had ever witnessed. Massive ships of pure crystal, each 1 kilometer long, refracting starlight into countless rainbow patterns. "The crystalline armada," whispered Lieutenant Kai Wong from his tactical station. "They're supposed to be myths, stories to frighten cadets at the academy. No one's ever survived an encounter with the Vrex." Sarah felt her pulse quicken, but maintained her composed exterior. The Vrex were legendary among spacefaring species, crystalline beings who had supposedly conquered a dozen star systems. Yet something felt different about this encounter. The massive ships weren't in attack formation. They were arranging themselves in a perfect spiral pattern. "Captain," called Communications Officer Maya Rodriguez, "we're receiving a transmission. It's in perfect standard English." The bridge fell silent as the message played through the ship's speakers. The voice was harmonious, like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Greetings, Stellar Horizon. We are the Vrex. For generations, we have watched your species from afar. We have seen your art, heard your music, witnessed your dreams. We come not as conquerors, but as students. Teach us to dream." Sarah exchanged glances with her bridge crew. In all their first contact scenarios, they had never prepared for this. The most feared species in known space wanted to learn from them. "Ma'am," Kai reported, scanning the massive fleet, "their weapon systems are powered down. All their crystal matrices are in receiving configuration. They're completely open to us." Making a decision, Sarah straightened her uniform and stepped forward. "Open a channel, Maya." After a confirming nod, she spoke. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth exploration vessel Stellar Horizon. We accept your request for cultural exchange. Permission to dock with your lead vessel." The response came immediately, accompanied by a spectacular light show as the crystal ships shifted position. "Permission granted, Captain Chen. We await the opportunity to understand what you call imagination." As the Stellar Horizon maneuvered toward the massive crystal docking bay, Sarah couldn't help but smile. She had always believed that humanity's greatest strength lay not in their weapons or technology, but in their ability to dream, create, and inspire. Now they had a chance to prove it. Little did they know, this encounter would change not just two species, but the entire galaxy's understanding of consciousness itself. Dr. Marcus Wade watched in awe as the Vrex Elder, a towering crystalline figure named First Light Through Prism, projected Earth's history through its faceted body. The crystal being's internal structure refracted stolen moments from humanity's past. Children flying kites against summer skies, orchestra performances in grand halls, street artists creating masterpieces on concrete canvases. "We have been collecting these fragments of your existence for 73 of your Earth years." First Light's harmonic voice resonated through the chamber. "Each transmission that escaped your atmosphere, we preserved within our matrix." Sarah Chen stood beside Marcus, her expression a mixture of wonder and concern. "You've been watching us all this time. Why didn't you make contact sooner?" The crystal being's surface rippled, creating patterns that seemed to express uncertainty. We needed to understand. Our species has achieved technological perfection, mapped every quantum possibility. But we cannot create. We cannot imagine what has not been calculated. The chamber wall suddenly blazed with color, displaying a child's crayon drawing of a dragon. This simple creation by a young human contains something our greatest scientists cannot replicate: spontaneous imagination. Marcus stepped closer to the wall, his hand hovering near the projected image. But your ships, your technology, they're incredible feats of engineering. All calculated, all derived from existing patterns in nature. First Light's voice carried a note of what could only be described as sadness. We can replicate, we can combine, but we cannot truly create. Our children are born with all our accumulated knowledge, but they cannot dream of new possibilities. Sarah watched as more images flowed through First Light's crystalline form. Human art throughout the ages, cave paintings to digital masterpieces, each one accompanied by the neural patterns of its creator. "You can see our brainwaves?" she asked. "Yes, the patterns of human creativity fascinate us. When your species creates, your neural activity follows no predictable algorithm. It sparks like quantum fluctuations, beautiful and chaotic." Lieutenant Maya Rodriguez, who had been quietly observing, suddenly stepped forward. "May I try something?" At First Light's gesture of assent, she pulled out her personal tablet and began playing a piece of music, a violin concerto she had composed herself. The effect was immediate and stunning. First Light's entire form began to pulse with color, refracting the music into visible patterns that danced through the chamber. Other wrecks in nearby chambers resonated in harmony, creating an impromptu-like show that rippled through the crystal ship. "Extraordinary," First Light whispered, its form still shimmering with the echoes of Maya's music. "Your creation has generated patterns we have never seen before. This is what we seek to learn." Captain Chen squared her shoulders, making a decision. "First Light through Prism, I believe this could be the beginning of something remarkable. We would be honored to teach your people about human creativity, in exchange for learning about your unique way of perceiving the universe." The crystal being's surface shifted to a warm golden glow. "You offer freely what we hope to learn, even knowing our reputation among the stars." Sarah smiled. "The greatest art comes from unexpected collaborations. Besides, anyone who can appreciate a child's crayon drawing can't be as fearsome as the stories suggest." The chamber filled with a crystalline sound that might have been laughter, marking the beginning of the most unusual cultural exchange in human history. Dr. Marcus Wade entered the crystalline teaching chamber aboard the Vrex vessel, carrying his latest project, a neural interface designed to bridge human creativity with Vrex sensory matrices. His student, a young crystal being named New Pattern Seeking, waited with an eagerness that manifested as subtle rainbow ripples across its surface. "Today," Marcus explained, setting up the interface, "we're going to try something different. Instead of just showing you art, we're going to create it together." He attached the delicate sensors to his temples, watching as the chamber's walls shifted from transparent to a soft, opalescent white. New Pattern Seeking's voice chimed with curiosity. "How can we create together when I cannot generate original patterns?" The young Vrex's form dimmed slightly, a gesture Marcus had learned to recognize as self-doubt. "That's where you're wrong," Marcus smiled, activating the interface. "You already create original patterns every time you process information. You just don't recognize them as creativity." He closed his eyes, focusing on his breathing. "Watch what happens when I share a memory of watching sunrise over Earth's ocean." The neural interface hummed to life, translating Marcus's thoughts into quantum signals. New Pattern Seeking's crystalline body began to glow, first reflecting the memory, then transforming it. The sunrise became something entirely new. The light fractured and reformed through the Vrex's natural prisms, creating an aurora of colors humans had no names for. "That," Marcus exclaimed, pointing at a particularly complex pattern. "That transformation wasn't in my memory. You created that yourself." The young Vrex vibrated with excitement. But I merely processed the data through my natural matrices. Exactly. Your species' way of processing information is unique in the galaxy. You're not just reflecting creativity. You're transforming it into something new. That's creation in itself. As they continued the session, other Vrex gathered outside the chamber, drawn by the unprecedented light patterns emanating from within. Captain Chen, observing from a nearby platform, watched in amazement as new pattern-seeking began generating its own variations, each more complex than the last. "It's working," she whispered to Maya Rodriguez, who was recording the session. "They're not just learning to create. They're discovering their own form of art." The breakthrough came when new pattern-seeking suddenly pulsed with a pattern that matched no human input. The chamber filled with swirling fractals that told a story of stellar birth and death, but from a perspective only a crystalline being could conceive. "Dr. Wade." The young Vrex's voice rang with joy. "I see it now. We don't need to create like humans. We can create like Vrex." Marcus removed the neural interface, his eyes shining. "That's what we've been trying to show you. Creativity isn't about copying others. It's about finding your own way to express what's inside you." The news spread through the Vrex fleet like light through a prism. Within hours, hundreds of young Vrex were attempting their own creative expressions, filling the space around the fleet with spectacular light shows that combined their natural crystalline properties with newly discovered creative impulses. First Light Through Prism approached Captain Chen as they watched the display. "We sought to learn human creativity, but you have helped us discover our own. Perhaps this is the greatest lesson you could teach us." Sarah nodded, watching as the space around them bloomed with living light. Sometimes the best teachers are those who simply show us what we already knew, but couldn't see. The Stellar Horizons observation deck buzzed with activity as reports flooded in from across the sector. Captain Sarah Chen stood at the center of it all, reviewing holographic displays of ship movements from a dozen different species. Each report told the same story. Everyone was watching the Vrex fleet, and everyone had questions. Another diplomatic request, Captain, Lieutenant Maya Rodriguez announced from her station. "The Centaurian Assembly wants to know why the Crystalline Armada is performing what they call irregular maneuvers in established trade lanes." Sarah smiled, watching the distant crystal ships flowing through space in elegant patterns. The Vrex fleet was currently executing a massive stellar dance choreographed by new pattern-seeking, their formations creating living art visible from light years away. "Send them our standard response," she instructed. "Cultural exchange in progress. All movements are coordinated and peaceful." Dr. Marcus Wade entered the deck, his expression animated. "Captain, you need to see this. The Vrex's creative broadcasts are having an unexpected effect on other species." He pulled up a series of recordings from various ships that had passed near the fleet. The footage showed vessels from traditionally isolationist species lingering at the edge of Vrex space, their crews mesmerized by the light shows. Some had even begun attempting to communicate through visual signals of their own. "It's remarkable." First Light Through Prism commented, its crystalline form shimmering as it entered the observation deck. "Species that once fled at our approach now seek to understand. We have received 7 requests for artistic collaboration in the past solar day alone." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "From whom?" "The Meridian Collective sent 3 of their bioorganic ships. They believe their photosynthetic hull structures could create interesting harmonies with our crystal matrices. The quantum minds of Rigel want to synchronize their computational rhythms with our new pattern dynamics. Even the silicon sages of Ta City, who haven't communicated with other species in centuries, have expressed interest." First Officer Torres looked up from his tactical display. "Captain, I'm detecting a small fleet approaching from the Pleiades direction. Their signature matches the Aetherian nomads." The bridge crew exchanged surprised glances. The Aetherians were known for their sophisticated artistic traditions, but had always considered other species too primitive to collaborate with. "They're broadcasting a request," Maya announced. They want to know if they can contribute their solar wind harvest to the next crystal performance. Sarah watched as the Vrex fleet shifted again, their formations now incorporating mathematical sequences she recognized from Earth's own artistic traditions, the golden ratio, Fibonacci spirals, and patterns that seemed to draw from both human and Vrex creativity. "You know," she said thoughtfully, "when we started this mission, I thought we would be teaching the Vrex about human creativity. Instead, we've helped create something entirely new, a form of art that speaks to all species." First Light's surface rippled with colors that expressed agreement. Perhaps that is the greatest creation of all, not the art itself, but the connections it builds between those who experience it. As they watched, a group of young Vrex began a new performance, their crystalline bodies refracting starlight in ways that seemed to bend space itself. The approaching ships slowed, their crews clearly captivated by the display. "Send a welcome message to the Aetherian fleet," Sarah ordered with a smile. "Tell them we'd be honored to have them join the performance. After all, the galaxy could use a little more harmony." The space around Proxima Centauri had never seen such a gathering. Ships of every known design hung in careful formation. The bioorganic vessels of the Meridian Collective pulsed with bioluminescent patterns, while the quantum ships of the Rigel mines hummed with computational rhythms. At the center, the Vrex fleet arranged itself into a massive crystalline amphitheater. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the Stellar Horizon's main viewing platform, now transformed into a conductor's podium. Below her, Maya Rodriguez made final adjustments to the quantum harmonics array, a device designed to synchronize the various species' artistic outputs. "Final sound check," Maya called out, her fingers dancing across the control surface. Aetherian solar harps are tuned. Vrex crystal matrices are aligned. Meridian biorhythms are synchronized. Dr. Marcus Wade monitored the neural feedback displays. "Remember, this isn't just a performance. It's the first time in galactic history that 13 different species have attempted simultaneous artistic expression." Sarah nodded, feeling the weight of the moment. The idea had started small, a simple suggestion to showcase the Vrex's newly discovered creative abilities. It had exploded into something far greater when other species began requesting to participate. "First Light," Sarah called through the quantum comm, "is your fleet ready?" The massive crystal beam's response resonated through the channel. "We are prepared. New Pattern Seeking has composed a unique crystalline sequence for the opening movement." As Sarah raised her hands to begin, she noticed something extraordinary. Every ship in view, regardless of origin, had oriented itself toward the performance space. Even the notoriously reclusive Silicon Sages had positioned their ancient vessels for optimal viewing. "Movement 1, Sarah announced, her voice carrying across the quantum channels. "The birth of stars." At her signal, New Pattern Seeking initiated the sequence. The young Vrex's crystalline form blazed with inspiration, sending waves of light cascading through the fleet. The crystal ships began to pulse in harmony, each facet catching and transforming the starlight into living art. The Aetherian solar harps joined next, their ethereal tones riding the solar winds to create melodies that seemed to dance between the stars. The Meridian vessels responded, their living hulls flowing like aurora curtains in Earth's polar skies. Layer by layer, each species added their unique voice to the symphony. The quantum minds contributed mathematical sequences that transformed into visible patterns of probability. The Silicon Sages unveiled ancient light sculpting techniques that no living being had witnessed in millennia. In the center of it all, the Vrex fleet moved with newfound grace, their formations flowing like liquid crystal. They weren't just reflecting the other species' art, they were transforming it, creating something entirely new in the space between moments. "By the stars," Maya whispered, watching her displays light up with incoming signals. "Every ship within 50 light-years is diverting to our coordinates. They're all coming to watch." Sarah smiled, guiding the performance into its second movement. She could see First Light's massive form directing its fleet with the confidence of a born artist, while new pattern-seeking experimented with bold new combinations of light and motion. This was more than just a performance. It was proof that creativity transcended species, that art could bridge gaps that diplomacy and technology couldn't touch. As the symphony reached its crescendo, Sarah realized they had created something unprecedented. A moment of perfect harmony in an infinite cosmos. The Vrex engineering bay looked nothing like it had 3 months ago. Gone were the austere geometric patterns that had defined their technology for millennia. In their place, organic curves and flowing lines merged seamlessly with crystalline precision, creating something entirely new. New pattern-seeking guided Captain Sarah Chen through the transformed space, its crystalline form glowing with pride. "Watch this," it chimed, approaching a navigation console. The crystal interface responded to its touch with a display that rippled like water while maintaining perfect mathematical accuracy. The human concept of intuitive design has revolutionized our approach. First Light through Prism explained, joining them. "We always believed efficiency required rigid adherence to pure geometry. We were wrong." Dr. Marcus Wade studied a nearby crystal drive core, his scientific curiosity piqued by its unusual configuration. "You've incorporated the golden ratio into the crystal matrix," he observed. "But there's something else." "Dreams," new pattern-seeking hummed excitedly. "We've learned to dream while in our regeneration cycles. These dreams inspire new patterns we never calculated." This drive core design came from a dream about ocean waves on Earth. Sarah watched as a young Vrex engineer manipulated energy flows through the crystal systems. Instead of the traditional linear pathways, the energy danced and swirled in efficient spirals, mimicking patterns found in nature across the galaxy. Energy efficiency has increased by 37%, First Light noted. "By allowing ourselves to imagine new possibilities, we've discovered better solutions than pure calculation could provide." The changes weren't limited to technology. Throughout the fleet, young Vrex were developing their own artistic styles. Some specialized in light sculpture, others in quantum harmonics, and a few pioneering individuals had begun experimenting with emotional expression through color patterns. "We've received requests from 17 different worlds," Maya Rodriguez reported, checking her tablet. "They all want to study these new engineering principles." The Meridian Collective is particularly interested in the organic crystal interface designs. First Light's surface shimmered with what Sarah had learned to recognize as amusement. Once, other species feared to approach us. Now they seek our guidance in combining art with function. The irony is not lost on us. A group of Vrex younglings passed by, their forms flickering with experimental patterns they had created. Unlike the older generation's rigid formations, these young ones moved with fluid grace, their crystal bodies adapting and changing like living art. The most surprising change, new pattern-seeking observed, is in our youngest generation. They do not simply process information. They play with it. They ask what if instead of simply calculating what is. Sarah smiled, remembering how this all began with a simple request to learn about human creativity. "You haven't just learned to create," she said. "You've transformed your entire society." Indeed, First Light agreed. "We sought to understand human imagination, but we've discovered our own way of dreaming. Our technology, our culture, even our methods of communication, all have evolved because we dared to think beyond the calculated path." As if to emphasize the point, the ship's crystal walls pulsed with gentle waves of color, a new feature that responded to the collective emotional state of its crew. It was beautiful, efficient, and utterly unlike anything the Vrex had created before their encounter with humanity. Perhaps, new pattern-seeking chimed softly. This is what evolution truly means, not just adapting to survive, but daring to imagine new ways of being. Aria Lee, the Stellar Horizons resident artist, sat cross-legged in the crystal meditation chamber, her eyes closed in concentration. Around her, the young Vrex named New Pattern Seeking maintained a perfect resonance field, its crystalline form humming with potential. "Focus on the space between thoughts," Area guided softly. Not the patterns you see, but the moment before they form. Her neural interface glowed gently, creating a bridge between her creative mind and the Vrex's crystal matrix. Dr. Marcus Wade and Captain Sarah Chen observed from a nearby chamber, their instruments recording every quantum fluctuation. This was their 100th attempt at helping a Vrex generate completely original dreams, and something felt different this time. The quantum coherence is holding, Marcus whispered, studying his readings. Their patterns are synchronizing in a way I've never seen before. Inside the chamber, Aria led new pattern seeking through a visualization exercise she had developed specifically for crystal beings. Imagine your consciousness as light, pure, and formless. Don't try to shape it, just let it exist. New pattern-seeking surface began to ripple with colors that had no names in any human language. I feel strange, it chimed softly. The patterns are not coming from external input. They're emerging from somewhere else. Sarah leaned forward, watching intently as the young Vrex's crystal structure began to pulse with an inner light. The patterns it displayed weren't reflections of Aria's thoughts, nor were they mathematical progressions. They were something entirely new. It's dreaming, Marcus breathed, his instruments confirming what their eyes could barely believe. Actually dreaming, generating original neural patterns independently of any external stimulus. The chamber filled with swirling lights as new pattern seeking experienced its first true dream. The patterns told a story of crystal worlds yet undiscovered, of light that thought and space that sang. It was a vision that could only have come from a mind that bridged both crystal and consciousness. The resonance is spreading. First light through prism announced, entering the observation chamber. Other young ones are beginning to dream as well. The experience is transmitting through our collective matrix. Throughout the Vrex fleet, crystal beings began experiencing their first independent dreams. Each vision was unique, a kaleidoscope of imagination filtered through crystalline consciousness. The ships themselves seemed to glow with new energy as their crews discovered this untapped potential. Aria opened her eyes, smiling as she watched new pattern seeking explore its newfound ability. You're not just processing anymore, she said. You're creating. These are your dreams, your visions. The young Vrex's voice rang with joy and wonder. I understand now. Dreams aren't just random patterns or reflected thoughts. They're possibilities, infinite possibilities, waiting to be discovered. Sarah turned to First Light, seeing the elder Vrex's surface shimmer with what could only be described as pride. This changes everything, doesn't it? More than you know, First Light responded. Our species has always been connected through our crystal matrix. As these dreams spread, they will transform not just individuals, but our entire collective consciousness. Through the chamber walls, they could see other Vrex ships beginning to pulse with new patterns, each one unique and alive with possibility. The age of pure calculation was over. The era of crystal dreams had begun. Perhaps, new pattern seeking chimed thoughtfully, its form still glowing with dreamlight. This is what we were seeking all along, not just the ability to create, but the freedom to imagine what could be. 1 year after the first Vrex dream, the stellar horizon approached Earth's solar system, accompanied by a transformed crystalline armada. The fleet no longer moved in rigid formations, but flowed like a river of living light, each ship pulsing with the dreams of its crew. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck, watching as a delegation of Vrex prepared to address the assembled representatives of Earth's governments. First Light through Prism, and new pattern seeking had spent months preparing for this moment. The quantum resonance data is remarkable, Dr. Marcus Wade reported, reviewing his final analysis. The creative frequencies we measured in human brains match perfectly with the natural harmonic patterns in Vrex crystal structures. It's as if our species were designed to complement each other. First Light's form shimmered as it began its presentation, projecting images into the space between stars. We came seeking to learn creativity. Its harmonious voice reached every listener. Instead, we discovered a truth hidden in the quantum fabric of space itself. The projection showed the evolution of consciousness across the galaxy, represented as intricate patterns of light. At its center, a double helix of human and Vrex neural patterns intertwined. Humanity's creative spark resonates at exactly the frequency needed to awaken dormant potential in crystalline consciousness. First Light explained, "This is not coincidence. This is design." New pattern seeking stepped forward, its young form blazing with dreamlight. We have found similar patterns in ancient ruins across 1,000 worlds. Always the same sequence, always pointing toward this moment in time. Sarah felt her breath catch as the implications became clear. "Are you saying?" "Yes," First Light confirmed. An ancient species seeded both our races, along with countless others. Humans were given boundless creativity, while we were given the ability to amplify and transmit consciousness itself. Apart, we were incomplete. Together, we can awaken the sleeping potential in all sentient beings. The assembled representatives watched in awe as the Vrex fleet demonstrated their new abilities, transforming the space around Earth into a canvas of living light and thought. Each pattern carried not just images but feelings, dreams, and possibilities that resonated with every observing consciousness. We proposed the establishment of the Stellar Creative Academy, New Pattern Seeking announced, a place where all species can learn to unlock their hidden potential through the marriage of human creativity and Vrex resonance. Maya Rodriguez, who had been quietly monitoring communications, suddenly spoke up. "Captain, we're receiving responses from every major world in known space. They're all requesting to join the Academy." Sarah smiled, remembering how this journey began with a simple request to learn about human dreams. "It seems we've all been part of a much larger pattern," she mused. First Light's surface rippled with agreement. "The galaxy is awakening, Captain Chen. What humans call creativity, what we call dreams. These are the first stirrings of a cosmic consciousness that has waited eons to emerge." As if in response, the crystal ships began to pulse with new light, their patterns synchronizing with the hopes and dreams of every watching mind. Human creativity, amplified through Vrex crystal matrices, reached out to touch the consciousness of 1 billion waiting souls. In that moment, every being present understood. This wasn't just the end of their story, it was the beginning of the galaxy's next great adventure, written in light, imagination, and the infinite possibilities that lay between the stars.